Kunsanda Sangarashidi Sampanakarajibani Shuna Susunatanga Saso Kataramanam not so what. Omi Chiki Pojane to Sun Sange Kunging over here and Sanchakuna Sunta Sepa, so wait a minute, passport. Okay. Let me pop up the chat. All right, so today is a day that we answer questions. So hopefully there's questions. No, everybody knows everything. What about obstacles? What are the physical obstacles or mental obstacles to do? Instead of being out of. Can you speak a little louder for me? Thanks. Sort of a rat wheel of negativity. So help yourself break out of that. How to deal with obstacles is your question. Mostly mental obstacles. Mostly mental obstacles. Okay. It's a good question. All right, good. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, I know that you couldn't hear that on YouTube. So the question was, in essence, how to deal with obstacles. There's outer obstacles, there's inner obstacles, meaning mostly mental kind of obstacles to practicing, right? Okay, so that's a good question. Um, I mean, they're all good questions, honestly. I really enjoy, just as an aside, I really enjoy getting questions because that means that, you're thinking about the Dharma and, I can solve something for you. And I know a lot of times people are shy about asking questions because they might feel like, oh, it's a dumb question or, whatever. But there, as they say, there are no dumb questions. And often and usually, actually, what happens is that um, people will say to you afterwards, oh, that was a good question. Thank you for asking. I had also that question. So please don't be shy ever about asking questions. I'll always do my best to answer. There might be a question I can't answer, in which case I'll just let you know I can't answer that. But usually I can offer a little bit of help anyway. So, obstacles. So, we have essentially two ways of practicing. Yeah. There's the formal practice that we do on our cushion or on the chair, where we're formally meditating or doing whatever other practices we have. And then there's what's called J-TOP or post meditation, which is all the other times. So the rest of your life, essentially, apart from the times that you're formally practiced. So formal, let's say formal practice and like daily practice or informal practice. Okay. So there are, when we say there's an obstacle, there's a word that you hear a lot in Vajrayana Buddhism, because there's an understanding, which I appreciate very much, that it's not always easy, right? This is one of the best things I think that there are about Buddhism is this recognition that things aren't always easy, that it's difficult to practice. It can be, challenging to try to put the teachings into practice and things like that. So there's methods and there's teachings and discussions and things like that around this topic. When we say obstacle, we mean something in the way, right? We want to get from here to Root Cafe and there's a big traffic jam. Well, that's an obstacle to getting there. So, but doesn't mean we can't get there, right? We could take a side street, go another way. We could walk, we could whatever, decide not to go. I mean, there's lots of things we can do. So, in the case of our formal practice, the obstacles that can arise can be outer obstacles like not having enough time, for example, right? Um, we have to do our work. We may have kids to take care of. We might have parents to take care of. There's a lot of things kind of taking up the hours of the day. Okay, that's an outer obstacle. Um, and then we might be physically sick. I think that's an outer obstacle also because it's something out of our control. Like this morning, for example, Um, and and then there's inner obstacles, which are like things that occur in our own mind, right? Maybe that's just we don't feel like doing it, or we're bored, and I think boredom, paradoxically, is a very interesting subject. Okay, because it happens if we are meant to practice every day, right? So sometimes we're going to feel like practicing, sometimes we're not going to feel like practicing, sometimes in the middle of our practice, we want to tear our hair out because it's so boring, right? So, but just as an aside, if boredom is the issue, which especially if we're practicing for many years, we're kind of doing the same thing many times, and anybody who's practicing to become, a master of something, like a master of an instrument, musical instrument, you've got to practice every day. When you see these amazing, uh, um, Olympic. I like to watch the figure skating because I'm a girl. But anyway, the figure skating, like who's this American woman who won? She's Chinese and she lived in California. Yeah. She's so adorable and so powerful, and I really love her. But do you think she's not practicing? You know, these people practice at least 4 hours a day, typically, right? So that's how much we should be practicing. I just talking with somebody about this. Um, that actually, uh, Tuku Pema Wangaribishe, one of our main teachers, wants us to practice 4 hours a day. And I'm sitting there going, what? You know? Uh, but the way that he puts it sounds very simple. But of course, in our day to day life, it's not that simple. But this is what he says: 24 hours in a day. How much is 3 times 8? Is 24, right? So you got 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, and then 4 hours to like do your laundry, do the dishes, go shopping, whatever. That leaves you 4 hours for practice. That's what he said. And like, he's not wrong, I guess, but it's not that easy also. So when people are in the more, what do I want to say, intense program that we have, I ask them to practice 2 hours a day, and even that is a challenge, right? But if sort of not having enough time is the challenge, um, we should look at that. We could look at that, and say, okay, yes, I have to do X, Y, Z, but I don't have to spend 2 hours playing video games, or scrolling or watching Netflix or whatever, right? I could spend those 2 hours practicing, or I could spend 1 hour doing that and 1 hour practicing. It's not to say we can't ever enjoy ourselves or we can't ever relax. Of course, we should enjoy ourselves. Of course, we should relax, we're not saying those things like entertainment are bad. It's just if we want to progress on the path, we have to put in the effort. It's not going to just come magically from the sky, you know? So just like Lisa, no, you is her last name. What's her first name? Alyssa. Um, so um, I'm sure there was plenty of times that she didn't want to get on the ice, you know, where her muscles were hurting and she wasn't into it. I mean, she took off like several years because she just wasn't feeling it, essentially, you know? So, um, so we can just look at our time management and our priorities and to think, okay, I think I could spend more time if I cut this out, or if I get up a little bit earlier, or if I stay up a little later, or whatever it is. We also, like, let's say that I'm not asking you to do this. I mean, some of you are supposed to be doing this, but um, let's say that you decided you didn't want to practice 2 hours a day. That doesn't have to be in one block, you know? You could do 15 minutes or you could do half an hour 4 times a day. That sounds a lot more manageable, doesn't it? I'm just going to sit for half an hour, or I'm just going to do whatever practice for half an hour. before breakfast, and then I'm going to do half an hour in my lunch break, and then I'm going to do half an hour before dinner, and then I'm going to do half an hour before I go to sleep. That's 2 hours, you know? So we can work with these things, we can use our imagination and so forth. But ultimately, the root of any kind of inner obstacle, like disinterest, you know, or boredom, resentment, what was the first thing you said? No, no, you said you used a certain word, um, or maybe I misunderstood you. Like there's this like resistance, I think is what you said. Yeah, resistance, right? All of that is because ultimately we're not keeping the ultimate goal in mind, right? We forget the reason that we are practicing. Okay. Um, I mean, I'm going to ask you a favor. Can you please text um, Melina and let her know that we're on? Because she's usually here too. Thank you. Um, so we have to think about that, right? Why are we practicing? And if our why is too small, if our why is because, you know, I said I would, like that's not enough. Like it's not enough, you know, it's really not enough. And so if we find ourselves in that position of feeling very negative, very resistant to practice and things like that, then we should examine why we are practicing and really go back to like the purpose, right? So our purpose, our ultimate purpose is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of ourselves and all beings. All right. So that might sound like too big, right? That might sound too far. That might sound too broad. And that's okay. You know, that's normal to feel like that. Then we can just mm, make it simpler in that we're practicing to benefit ourselves and others, at least to think that way. This is for myself and for others, you know? And if it's a situation of like not wanting to practice, then we should look at what are called the four mind changes or the four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma. So, Dharma is teachings, yeah? So, these four thoughts are especially meant to remind us of why we need to practice. And I love it so much because this is an ancient teaching. This is not something that came up last year, right? So, what does that mean? It means all human beings have this issue, okay? Anybody who's on the path is going to run into this issue, which is why these things exist. They wouldn't be there if every other person was always very enthusiastic about practicing, right? Okay. So I think it's helpful to remember that because, especially as Westerners, we can sometimes feel, I'm not good enough. This, you know, like, I'm the only one who's facing this kind of problem and, you know, whatever. You're not. Every single practitioner has faced this problem. Okay. So, what are those four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma? Precious human life. Precious human life. No, that's the first one. Anybody can shout out if they know. Linda, you know. You don't? Ah, okay. Precious human life, death and impermanence, the suffering of samsara or cyclic existence, and karma. You're confusing with the with the four noble truths. Yeah. Okay. So let's go into these because that is the thing that's going to help us overcome these obstacles. Okay. First is what's called precious human life. All right. What does that mean? So precious human life, all life is considered precious. This is like why killing anything is like the worst thing that we can do, because life is extremely precious to every living being, including animals. All right, including animals that we raise for and torture and slaughter. Um, okay, I'm just going to look up the list because so there's advantages and why am I looking if you don't remember? Okay, 10 advantages and 8 circumstances or something. It's information derived from. Sorry, what? I can't hear you. Yeah, it's from the Buddha's teachings. Yeah. So the sutras and the tantras. Why are you not showing me this? Oh, let me see. Let me see. It's also sometimes called the Four Thoughts. Yeah. Come on. Freedoms and advantages, right? So the 8 freedoms and 10 advantages. These are the things that are the components of a life, of a human life, that allow us to encounter and practice the Dharma, okay? So that we can attain enlightenment. So not all humans meet all of these conditions. That's why it's called precious human life, even though all life is precious, okay? So the 8 freedoms are essentially being free of being born in any of the other. There are 6 realms, so being born a human and not being born in one of the other realms, okay? Then there's a few more. We're not going to go into great detail, but 8 freedoms, and the last one is it's a weird because it's like a double negative, but freedom from like a time where a Buddha has not come. Okay. So then the 10 advantages, let me talk about that for 1 second. Um, a Buddha has come. So there are, so in Buddhist cosmology, they're talking about extremely wide spectrum of time, okay? Like inconceivable lengths of time. So when they talk about like the establishment of the universe and then the destruction of the universe, so like that kind of time. Okay. So there are periods where a Buddha has not even appeared. Okay. And that is due to the merit of the beings in that particular situation. Okay. So the of these 10 advantages, there's 5 circumstantial and there's 5 personal. So the 5 circumstantial are, as I said, the Buddha has come, has taught the Dharma. So sometimes a Buddha will appear, but not teach. And again, that's a matter of merit. The teachings have survived. So right now, the teachings are still there, but they are disappearing. I mean, when the Chinese invaded Tibet in 1959, they destroyed a tremendous amount of texts, sacred texts and writings and things like that. Okay, comparable to the Library of Alexandria, right? Okay, worse, really. Um, so the teachings are still here, but like our teacher, I remember Tuka Pemawangil saying, you know, being very sad because he was like, there's just almost nothing has been translated into English or other languages. And there's a lot out there that has been translated. But he's like, there's still just volumes upon volumes of texts that have not been translated. And those are just the texts that have survived. So, think that there are disappearing. There are followers of the teachings. So you can be in a situation where a Buddha has come, has taught the Dharma, the teachings have survived, but nobody's following this path. Okay. And there are favorable conditions for Dharma practice. So that means like here in America, like we're still, thankfully, still allowed to practice Buddhism. You know, that might not exist in a couple decades, depending on where this country goes. You know, I mean, like in China, they're not allowed to. You know, um, so this can happen. Then there's the 5 personal advantage. and that is being a human being. So as you see, some of it is a little bit repetitive. Born in what's called born in a central land. So a central land is anywhere where um, the teachings exist. So this would be considered a central land, okay, with faculties intact. So what that means is that if we are, um, let's say, blind and deaf and this kind of thing, it's not saying that we can't progress on the path. Of course we can. It's just saying it's a pretty big obstacle, and it makes it harder. That's all. Just makes it harder. Doesn't make it more. Doesn't make it impossible. Our lifestyle is not harmful or wrong. So if we're in a situation where, you know, our family raised us to be a thief, for example, or this kind of thing, it can be difficult to, um, again, access the teachings, want to teach, and so forth. Um, and then with, trust in the teachings, essentially. So there's a lot more to say about this. And I probably have videos on it on our channel. But anyway, in brief, that's Precious Human Life, the first one. Then the second one is death and impermanence. So the thing about, before I go on to that, the thing about Precious Human Life is that it's considered extremely difficult to obtain. All right. Like extraordinarily difficult to obtain. And so we need to use it while we have it because it is impermanent. And it's our one chance in a million to attain enlightenment. Okay. So we should practice, right? So they compare it to the traditional example is like there's a tortoise, turtle, whatever, swimming in the seven seas, and floating on top is this like uh, golden ring, right? And the turtle only comes and pokes his head above the water once every 100 years. Okay, so the chances of getting, so the turtle's going, this ring is going in all directions. The chance of getting a human life, a precious human life, is if when that turtle pokes his little head up, he ends up right in the middle of that ring. Okay. Uh, okay. I mean, it's rare. We can understand that it's rare. Um, if we think about playing the lottery, all right, our chances, especially these mega big things, because a lot more people will buy those tickets, our chances of winning are minuscule, like extremely small. All right. But let's say, so having a precious human life is winning the lottery. Okay. Winning one of these big mega bucks lotteries. All right. We have that now. If we don't use it, if we don't practice, if we don't study, if we don't try to, um, walk along this path towards enlightenment, it's like having the ticket in your hand and not cashing it in. That, I think, is an example that we can really understand. Okay. So you have your little lottery ticket and you establish, oh, I won this lottery. I now have $1.5 trillion, you know? Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Whatever, you know. And we know we have a deadline. We have a deadline to claim it. I think it doesn't last forever, right? It's got to be a deadline. So we know this, but like we have to get in the car, got to drive over to this office, got to fill out a form, got to figure out what to do with it. I don't know, just forget it. I'm too tired. That's us not practicing, you know? That's us not doing whatever we can to progress along the path. I know I should put it in, but there's this video game, and like I really like this video game, and just never mind. It's raining. Like we would never do that. We'd never do that. So we have to come to that kind of understanding, yeah, of the importance of what we're doing. And I understand that it can be difficult to kind of sew all these things together, right? And to really get it in our heart of like, yeah, this is super important. But it is super important if this is our thing. If it's not, if we don't care about it or we don't believe these things and we just want to learn about it or we just want to meditate or whatever, that's fine. That's a choice, you know. That's our everybody has the freedom to make whatever choices they want to make, you know. But if we have determined that this is the path we want to follow when we've taken refuge in bodhicitta vows and all that, then you know, you better step up. Cause I need a man. Okay. So precious human life leads to, yeah, death and impermanence. So impermanence, we can die at any moment. Yeah. We don't know, you know. Probably you're the youngest in the room. Okay. What's your name again? Jesse. He, him, she, her, he, him. Okay. Jesse's probably youngest here, I would guess. And so, and I probably shouldn't have picked out a person that's not available. I'm sorry, I'm just realizing it's about to get real morbid, Jesse. Jesse could die for any of us. Okay. So that's just true, you know. Like I grew up in a funeral home. I saw everything, you know, babies in the casket, little kids in the casket, you know, teens, 20s, 30s, all the ages, so old people, mostly old people, okay, majority old people, but that doesn't mean those other ones don't exist. So we have this feeling that we're just gonna we're gonna live forever, or maybe like we'll die when we're 107 or something. Okay. No, we could die at any moment, which means our precious human life is gone. We can't guarantee that our next life is going to have the same circumstances because all of that rides on karma. So you see, all of these things kind of tie together, right? And it's not just death, but it's also like our circumstance. So we have all those 10 freedoms, 8 advantages. Then there's like 16 auxiliary because, you know, Tibetans, like they love that shit. So oh my God. And sometimes the way they count you guys is really too much. Mm, it's true, right? Am I right? Oh my God. It's like there's five, whatever. There's five things. They'll say that. There's five things. There's one, and then there's the second thing, and then there's the third thing. Then there's the fourth thing. And all those things together make five. That they actually say that drives me crazy. So anyway, but that's their way, and I shouldn't criticize. Sorry. So, um, anyway, there's a lot of lists, but in general, right? The conditions that allow us to practice the Dharma, even though we've like already met the Dharma, we've already have interest in it. Maybe we've even met some lamas and this kind of thing. We've done some study, we've done some practice, all that, everything seems great, right? But our life can blow up, you know? Like, we should know that by now, by our big age, you know? Things happen in life, right? Suddenly you don't have a job. Suddenly, you know, your partner has a stroke or something and you have to take care of them. You know, where then all your time is gone, you know? So your outer circumstances can change and your mind can change. You can just suddenly decide, I'm just not interested in this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Then you've lost your precious human life because you're not going to do it anymore, right? So even your interest in the Dharma is impermanent. So we have to keep that in mind. Therefore, we should practice, right? We have a precious human life, therefore we should practice. It's impermanent, therefore we should practice. Then the third thing, I always get confused between the third and the fourth. Let me just pull that up for 1 second. Um, then okay, I was right, right. So suffering of samsara is the third thing. So samsara is cyclic existence, okay? So that is the round of birth and death and birth and death and birth and death that we have been on since beginningless time. We have to keep that in mind. This is not a fun place, okay? Times we have a lot of fun for sure, you know, a lot of enjoyment, a lot of pleasure, whatever. But in general, there's so much suffering, you know, really a lot of suffering. And not just for us as human beings, but for animals, for beings in other realms. Okay. So we cannot find lasting happiness in these outside things, in cyclic existence. Okay. We have to not be like pessimistic, okay, but to be realistic and understand that this is the state of affairs, you know? Everything that we enjoy eventually goes away. It's really, it's so terrible. It's so like, it's such a, I don't know, it's just like dark humor to me, even though it's really not funny. So um, we should think about that because if we don't practice, we're just going to continue to be stuck in this mess, in this spinning prison. Not only that, but this contemplation of the suffering of cyclic existence ideally will engender compassion in our own hearts for others, right? When we see, when we think about how much others are suffering. And unfortunately, it's easy. Just in my mind right now, there's like 10 examples, right? And I'm sure that each of you can, I mean, just scroll through, you know, Instagram for 5 minutes or watch the news, you know, like, or just think about your family or yourself or your street or the city or the country. Like, it's so easy to come up with these examples, you know, unfortunately. Do you really want to go through that again? Or do you want to end up like in a worse situation than what you're in right now? You know, like when I think about that, I'm like, ugh, I don't even want to go to high school again, you know, much less deal with everything else. Like, I want to be free of this. And more than that, I want others to be free as well. And the only way that I can really help, not the only way, but the best way that I can really help them to be free of suffering is to help them remove the cause of suffering, which is this fundamental ignorance about the nature of reality and the nature of the self. Okay. And that can only be addressed by attaining enlightenment, freedom once and for all. All right. And that doesn't happen overnight, and that doesn't happen without effort. And that's not always a fun path, you know. I don't know what class it was, one of my recent classes I had, and people were like, why is this so hard? Do you remember that? Why is this so hard? I was like, I'm gonna punch you right in the face. Bro." Everything's hard, bro. You know? Okay. Everything's hard. You guys have kids. Oh, you have one kid or two? One. Isn't that raising your kid difficult? Yeah. See? You know, Michelle has kids. Okay. She has kids. Yes. Yeah. Right. So I'm just for people on YouTube, I'm asking people about raising kids and how difficult it is. And there's unanimous agreement that it's really difficult. But we do things that are difficult, like getting a degree or having kids or going to the gym or whatever form of torture we decide to do, um, because we see value in that. Yeah. It's the same with this. It's not going to just, I don't know why people expect it to be easy. I don't know. Like we're working with our mind, you know, which is full of really strong habits. And those habits aren't always easy to overcome, right? You know, I mean, if you like, this is why, hi Tess, hey, um, uh, you know, I ask people if you think habits are easy to overcome, just put your toothbrush in a different place in the bathroom. Just move your toothbrush to a different place. See how long it takes you to reach for that place instead of the other place, you know? And I always talk about like this time I was in 3-year retreat over when it turned over into 2000. And it wasn't because of that, but because there had been big storms where we were. So we were like a week or two without electricity and without water, by the way, because it was an electric pump to go up into the thing. So anyway, I my room was upstairs and there was a light switch at the bottom of the stairs and a light switch at the top of the stairs. The bottom of the stairs, I would flip the switch and it would be dark. That makes sense, right? It's dark. You're going to flip the switch on. But then I would walk up the stairs in the dark and flip off the switch. And I'm like, wait a minute. What's happening here? Right. But that's just because I had that habit and I only had that habit for 1 year. So imagine the habits that we've had just for this lifetime, not to mention all of our previous lives. A habit of reacting with anger, a habit of reacting with jealousy, a habit of being, too self-focused, right? There's all kinds of habits like that that are difficult to overcome. So yeah, it's going to take work. And there's a word in Tibetan. I have to figure out I want to learn what the word is in Tibetan. But anyway, this word has been translated most often as diligence, one of the 6 paramitas, diligence, okay? But the correct translation is joyful effort, right? Which is, pardon me, so different, right? It's so different. So think about that, joyful effort. I'm going to make joyful effort because I understand the importance of this and I understand that this is going to cause less suffering for myself, less suffering for others, and ultimately freedom, complete freedom for myself and others. Yeah. So we have done lots of things with joyful effort. We should think about that. Go back in your life and think about like raising kids, joyful effort. Or you have a new love, if you can remember back to those days. Okay. Okay. And they're going to come over for the first time and you're going to make them dinner. Oh, you're gonna put a lot of effort, man, right? But it's joyful. You're gonna plan the meal and you're gonna go shopping and you're gonna clean your house really well and you're gonna set the table beautifully and you're gonna make sure that, everything is in place, but you're like singing, and sort of going along with this thing. Joyful effort. That's the kind of effort that we should put into practicing with joy because we know the result. Yeah. So we there's so much suffering in samsara. We want to practice for others, right? And we want to make sure that we get out of this. We also don't want to suffer, essentially, right? my one of my closest friends in France, when we were in retreat, he used to say, and I know some of you I know this already, but whenever she had something was like really pleasant, like some delicious dessert or something like that, she would go, samsara is so good sometimes, you know? It is, it is for sure, but not forever, that's for sure. And then the fourth thing is karma, law of cause and effect. Okay. Karma is a huge subject. So please understand that I'm not going to get through the whole thing now. All right. But in essence, it's every action has a reaction. All right. So um virtuous or positive or skillful acts of body, speech, and mind result in happiness, and unvirtuous or negative or unskillful acts of body, speech, and mind result in suffering. That's the broadest stroke that you can have. Okay. So, why I'm saying I really prefer skillful and unskillful because karma is not about rewards and punishment, right? And I'm very frustrated by this pop culture idea of karma as punishment. Yeah, karma is going to get you. It's karma, karma in the end. I'm like, okay, I should not be on the internet. So, karma is considered a natural law. Okay, it's not. In a sense, it's amoral. Like there's not a moral value judgment, in a sense, on what we do, which like sounds a little strange when we think about it. But if you think about karma as a natural law, think about it in a sense, it's like the law of gravity. Okay. The law of gravity is everywhere on this planet, anyway, right? And uh, essentially, uh, what goes up must come down. Okay. That's the law of gravity, is pretty easy. So if I'm holding this cap here and I let it go, it's going to drop. There's no moral judgment on that. It's just according to the law of gravity. It's what like impersonal. Yeah. If I let this go, this is going to drop. It's not if I let this go, it's going to turn into a dove and start flying around the room. Or if I let this go, it's going to go up and touch this pretty ceiling. All right. It's just that. It's neither good nor bad. But the fact is, if I hold it here and I let it go, it's going to fall. Okay. Now, there's no mercy in karma either. All right. If I'm on a high rise in New York City and I throw this out the window, it's going to fall. If I'm in a high rise in New York City and I throw, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example that isn't too painful, but I can't. Um, if I'm in New York City and I throw my puppy out the window, sorry, I was going to say baby. It's like puppy. So, what do you want to say? What do you want me to say? Let's say, I throw my grandmother's heirloom ring out the window. Ah, thank God. Whew, that's so difficult. Um, let's say that. Okay. So if I throw my grandma's ring out the window, it's going to fall too. There's no, it does, it's not because that thing is precious and that, I'll lose it forever. That Superman swoops in and gets it for me and brings it back up to the window, right? So there's, in that sense, there's no mercy. It's just cause and effect. That's it. So we, by virtue of this law, okay, um, if we hurt someone, we are going to suffer eventually for that. It's not that there's some being outside of us that's going to say, that's going to punish us. It's just because that's the way things work. Okay. That's just the way things work. If we are really kind to someone, we're going to receive some kind of happiness because of that. All right. Not because that's a reward for what we did. It's just because that's how things are. That's how things work. Okay. So um, that is like a very, 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 very basic, rudimentary explanation of karma. All right. We need to think about that in relation to practice, into like, why is that included in these four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma? Is because we don't actually know what, for a couple of reasons, actually. First, we don't really know what's in store for us down the road. Okay. So this is where karma gets complicated, right? Because karma doesn't just work in this life, it also works from previous lives to this life. And it's not static. It's not like, oh, I was George Washington and I cut down a cherry tree, right? Which is bullshit, by the way. And then now in this life, a cherry tree is going to fall on my head or something. You know, everything that we do, like karma's always in flux, right? Because like the positive, let's say the skillful things that we do sort of lessen the effect of the unskillful things that we did, and vice versa. Then there's this notion of conditions. The conditions need to be there for that karma to ripen, for that karmic seed to ripen. Conditions have to be there, right? So if someone gives you an envelope of apple seeds, right, and you just put that envelope in your kitchen drawer, it's never going to become an apple tree, right? It's just going to sit there in your drawer. But the moment you provide the conditions for that, so you dig the hole and you plant the seeds and you water it and you protect it from deer and all the things, then it can grow into an apple tree as long as the conditions are there. Yes. So the question was, is everything that happens in our life a continuation of karma? It is. Okay. But it doesn't mean that we're powerless. So because karma is not static, it's not equal to fate. Okay. We can work with that. And if we are practicing, then we are naturally purifying our negative karma and creating positive karma. So it's another reason to practice. Okay. Karma's huge. Mm, yeah. Let me get back to you on that because I remember asking someone, uh, his name is Woolston Fletcher, and he's brilliant and he's a translator. And I'm pretty sure I asked him that question because for me, that's still a little bit confusing. It's a little confusing. So I want to get back to you on that. Okay. Actually, let me make a note. The question was, if a parent loses two children in a car accident, was it that parent's karma? And I'm actually for sure it's their children's karma. That's without question. Okay. And that's the thing where, um, hold on, just let me make this note. Huh? Oh, collective karma. Right. Yeah. So, but I don't think that's collective karma. I don't think his example was. Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah. So Michelle raised the notion of collective karma, which is another complication in karma. So let's say all of us together decide to um, make a big donation to the food bank that Eileen is associated with. Okay. Um, uh, which I would actually, just off the top of my head, I would really like to do that today. So I'm going to pass around this basket before we close, and whatever money you put in there is going to go to the food bank, which is really struggling. Okay. And we won't take anything, but we'll give something to them because they were still renting their space. Um, uh, so let's say all of us together just decide to make a donation to the food bank. Maybe this is super simplified, okay, but just to give you an example. So maybe in the next life, we're all, because we have kind of karma together, we're all like end up as workmates or something, let's say, in the next life, okay? And we decide to buy a lottery ticket together. Because of that donation, that act of generosity, we win the lottery together and we can split those winnings without killing each other. Okay, please behave yourself in the next slide. We do this. Yes, it's James. Mhm. Yes. Yes. So I know you couldn't hear that on YouTube. So essentially, he was saying, this um, makes it easier to understand why good people suffer. I know people like that too. The nicest, sweetest, most generous, and just life is continually punching them in the face. So that's why it's karma coming from past lives, which doesn't mean that they don't deserve compassion, okay, or help or any of that. Understanding what karma is not an invitation to go, well, you did it to yourself. Sucks to be you, I guess, right? It's all of us are caught in this trap. All right. Hmm. Hmm. Sure. Yes. So his question was, what how do we know what is positive or negative act? So next week I'm actually going to talk about karma because I see there's a lot of interest and it's a huge subject, but I'll do my best to answer your question now. So his question was saying, sometimes it's fuzzy, right? We're not really sure if it's a positive or negative act. The the which is true, right? Because life is not simple and there's, no kind of black and white. There's always gray. The main thing is that we should look at what our motivation is in that case, right? This is what our teachers say. If your motivation is good, it will result in good for yourself. Okay. But we have to be really brutally honest about that. Because sometimes we think we have a good motivation and we're just tricking ourselves. Those are those situations I'm sure everybody knows. Well, I was just being honest. I thought it was really important to be honest and rip this person to shreds and hurt them very deeply, this kind of stuff. So it's not like because karma is dispassionate and what's the word? Um, neutral. What do you say, like in law, like the judge needs to be impartial? Thank you. Impartial. Karma is impartial, you know? So it will, just because there's not like a person that you can convince, right? And be like, well, I meant well. Like if you really meant well, it'll come out the way it's always going to come out the way that it should. It's always going to come out that way because it's just a natural law. Okay. So I feel like that's not a good enough answer, and that's okay. That's okay. All right. We will go more into that next week because we're already over and I didn't even give you any meditation. But there you go. Um, so we're gonna pass this around, collect donations for the food bank, and then we're gonna do the closing prayers after. Thank you. And I'll put some money in there too. Kathy, hi. Nice to see ya. Mm. So, um, uh, if you are on YouTube, um, then you can pull up your closing prayers, but I will share with you. We start with the long life prayers. We're just going to do everything in English. You know, okay, right, there we go. Okay, here's my water. And you don't have to join in if it's not your cup of tea, it's okay. In the celestial realm, encircled by snow peaks, you are the source of every happiness and benefit. Tenzin Gyatso, Avalokiteshvara himself, may your lotus feet remain firm for 100 eons. Om Swasti, in the vast expanse of your fearless wisdom, shine the 100,000 cooling light rays of your all-pervading great love, dispelling the anguish of beings in this degenerate age. O supreme jewel of space, region of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, remain with us continuously, we pray. Om Swasti, through the dependent causation and the blessings of the infinity of long life deities, may Pema Warngel, prophesied magical emanation of the Taku and Setro, be firm in body, speech, and mind, like the king of the sounding drum, Amitabha, and may the great waves of his wishes for the teachings and beings spread out to their ultimate extent. We pray for the good health of the lamas. We pray for their precious lives to be long. We pray for their activities to spread and increase. May we be blessed never to part from them. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as faith endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya, may I, inseparable, found in secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. And then the mantra. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tisha Drito Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anurakto Me Bawa Sawa Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sawaka Sutsame Chitam Shriyam Kuruhung ha 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 ho Bhagawan Sawatata Gata Vajrama Me Munsa Vajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva. All right, thank you so much, and thank you again for your patience this morning. And we have Buddha Sadhana tomorrow, I believe, from 6 to 6:30 on Zoom. So you can look at our website for that. And then meditation, every Sunday as usual. Thanks again, and we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody on YouTube. Bye.